Thank you, Mr. Bone. It is a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I would like to thank the Backbench Business Committee for enabling this important debate, and I would also like to thank the honourable gentleman for his speech, which was powerful and insightful, and the questions that are being asked deserve good answers. And I'd also like to congratulate my honourable friend on the work that he has done to produce this very valuable report. As the honourable gentleman said, this is an issue that will not go away. There is a cross-party coalition of members of Parliament who will continually bring this issue to the fore until there is justice for those who have been so obviously wronged. And I want to start by paying tribute to our nation's entrepreneurs. They are in businesses, small, medium and large, and they should be celebrated, encouraged, nurtured, and even occasionally lionised. These are the people with aspiration, with ambition, with ideas, with entrepreneurial energy and drive. They take the calculated risks that create something, which in turn creates wealth and prosperity. They create employment. They support families. And they are the true engine of our economy. And to care about the future prosperity of our country is to be passionate about entrepreneurs. We should be fostering the energy and ambitions of our businesses. And that is why, Mr. Bone, this debate matters. Because the one thing we've learned from the scandals at HBOS Reading and RBS-GRG is how frighteningly easy it is for businesses, small and large, to be parted from their assets and simply taken out and erased from existence. Any small technical breach of a commercial loan contract can be seized upon by a bank as an excuse to foreclose on a business, even if that technical breach has no impact on the business's current performance or future success. The most common rationale for this extreme measure is the allegation that the value of the property which the loan is secured against has fallen. This means that the loan-to-value covenant is breached, which gives the bank the power to appoint an LPA receiver or put the company into administration. And there are many, many cases where businesses that have never missed a payment, but still the banks have seen fit to move in and seize the company. At that point, the owners immediately lose control of their businesses, and they can only watch helplessly from the sidelines while their business is asset stripped and destroyed.
I thank Mr. Bone for allowing me to intervene. It is really upsetting to think that in companies like GRG, there are these robbers, these people who are set up to try and find something that they can use to screw the people who are their customers out of their life's work. It is so appalling, I can't believe it can happen, but it seems to be happening all the time.
The intervention of my honourable and gallant friend, who not only says the right things, but also says them with the passion and angst that I think we all feel on behalf of our constituents. At the stroke of a pen, and often based on a valuation that was instructed by the bank in the first place, a director or an individual loses immediate control of their business and their assets. And to that end, I'd like to share with you this afternoon, Mr. Bone, the story of one of my constituents, whose story will be added to the many other stories that have been told and will no doubt be told today. My constituent's name is John Roseman, and I can do no better than describe him in his own words from his LinkedIn profile. He describes himself, and this is accurate, having had the experience of meeting him, as an entrepreneur. He is absolutely an entrepreneur. He fits the bill, with vast experience in international business in the high-tech area of microelectronics, solar, oil and gas, clean room environments, and high-purity manufacturing. He had a business which he describes in his profile, but the name of the business was Semitech UK, as a clean manufacturing service company specialising in turnkey clean environments, high purity gas, chemical and water installations, mechanical, control and electrical engineering. This business had a turnover, Mr. Bone, of £10 million. It's based out of my constituency. There are not so many businesses in my constituency that are turning over £10 million, but John's business was turning over £10 million, and he had blue-chip clients across the world, on every continent, and his business was making money. It was a profitable business. It had good margins. He came to see me in a surgery that I held in Dunblane with a whole set of management accounts, the evidence of the success that he had made of his business, that he founded in 1990, was clear and obvious. But that all changed suddenly in 2011 without any notice. John had the rug pulled from under his feet. The RBS said that they would like security on an existing facility. No covenant had been broken. Nothing substantial had changed, except John's business was becoming more successful and making more money. One day, the bank appointed someone to call on his business. John thought that he had come to do an inspection on behalf of the bank. No, this was an insolvency practitioner whose first words to John were that his facility was immediately withdrawn and his business had been put into administration by the bank. John Roseman had another company called MoveStore. His business was not liquidated, but RBS-GRG took all of the assets of that business and sold them on. In value, they gave him a fraction of the true cost of that business's assets. Now, I can tell you, I spent some time with John, and he has obviously given me permission to talk about his case today in this debate. I used him solely as one story, one illustration of the brutal approach of RBS-GRG and other banks in relation to small and medium-sized businesses like John Roseman's.
I'm very grateful to the Honourable Member for Stirling. Isn't it interesting how when people talk about entrepreneurs in this country, we frequently talk about their inability to develop from an SME into a larger company, and we put that down to selling the idea abroad. But actually, today's debate and the effects of the finance show that there is perhaps another reason that they are unable to do that, and it has got nothing to do with their own ability or their own out-of-the-box thinking.
The honourable gentleman speaks well to that subject. And banks should be existing to provide, for their own commercial interests, of course, the capital that businesses need in order to scale up, become bigger businesses. That's just not how it works in this country, and I'm very sorry to have to say that to you, Mr. Bowen, and to the members present. The impact of the events of John Roseman's story were, of course, far more than just commercial in nature. These events had a devastating effect on Mr. Roseman, his health, as I witnessed when I met him, and his family, and his employees, and their families. John's business was stolen from him, Mr. Bowen, and I make no apology for using that word.
He is making a brilliant speech. And does he agree that the common factor with a lot of these businesses was the fact that they had assets, or the people had personal assets, the bank chose them deliberately, but then denied year after year, time after time, that GRG was a profit centre, despite the fact that the Skilled Persons Report determined that in 2011, GRG made £1.1 billion in profit on a turnover of £1.3 billion.
Stephen Kerr.
Grateful to my honourable friend for his intervention. I don't think there can be any doubt about the nature of GRG's operations, and to say anything other would be a deceit on the part of GRG. I'm afraid that, again, and I apologise to have to use such unparliamentary language to describe the operations of a business. But that is the case too often in the examples that so many of us have had brought to us. John's business, as I say again, was stolen. There was no failure of John's business plan. There was no failure of his business model. It was a success. And his business's products and services were in demand. And his customers certainly didn't desert him. But the Royal Bank of Scotland brought him down for their own purposes, as has just been described. And he still has yet to get anything like an appropriate settlement and compensation for the way he was treated. John, Mr. Bone, is cut from rock. And the Royal Bank of Scotland should be warned that they can try and close his account, his case, because they've told him, but he won't be giving up and he won't be going away. He wants justice and recompense, and he should be treated with more respect than he has been so far. And as his Member of Parliament, I will support him as best I can. He suffered severe trauma, and I'm only using this one example as an example of so many others. His health has been affected through stress and anxiety. He has suffered heart problems. He had surgery, heart surgery, just the week before his daughter was married. His marriage has suffered. His friendships have suffered. He said to me, and I quote, "My wife found it especially hard having to deal with the day-to-day situation, and our marriage suffered seriously and was lucky to survive the constant pain, anger, and aggression I was going through, having to watch our family business and assets being stolen from us." End of quote. This is the human cost, along with the human cost of his employees, his team, and their families. Can I repeat? At the stroke of a pen, directors and shareholders suddenly have no voice and no right of reply. And they never missed a payment. They honoured their obligations. It's that easy. Customer gets no warning, no ability to appeal. This can happen where, as I cited earlier, the valuation upon which a supposed contract breach is based, correct or not. So, who does determine that a property value has fallen? It's usually a surveyor from one of the bank's panel firms who depend on the banks for their business. That's hardly an independent action then. And hypothetically, if a bank had a liquidity problem and needed to raise funds quickly, all it has to do is engineer a bogus breach of contract, and the rest is history. Sadly, it is a common accusation that that is exactly what many banks did in the aftermath of the financial crisis. And as we can see, it's not just the bank involved here, it's surveyors, it's LPA receivers, and it's administrators, all playing their part. It's therefore imperative that these practitioners and their regulators must be held to account for the roles that they played and continue to play in the destruction of British businesses.
Being very, very kind with his time. The fact that the contracts that the banks entered into with their individual customers were so complex, so cleverly, and I use the word carefully, worded, that it actually misled the individuals as to the powers that the bank had over them, plays into the very cry from the APPG about a much more simple, straightforward and honest contractual relationship between the banks and the individual customers.
Stephen Kerr.
The honourable gentleman for his intervention. Yes, complexity, absolutely, is a weapon in the hands of the banks. The RBS has been at pains to point out that the promontory report did not find any evidence of deliberate undervaluation of properties. However, the report also states, in many cases, it could not find any evidence that a valuation was correct. In other words, they were making it up as they went along. In this very cosy relationship, the surveyors, the LPA receivers, insolvency practitioners and financial institutions all hold incredible power over the borrower. This power was used and still can be used to enrich their own firms and their own balance sheet position at the expense of viable businesses. Indeed, The Section 166 report specifically refers to searching out opportunities to default. Insolvency was seen as an opportunity to get rid of troublesome complaints at the voice of individual business people, wiped out at the point of receivership or administration, and avenues for complaint or redress blocked. Another method, already mentioned, some banks, such as the Clydesdale, have utilised to wipe out swathes of troublesome or just unwanted business customers, and I spoke about this in the last debate in the Chamber, is to sell their loans on and let a shady vulture fund like Cerberus do the dirty demolition job for them. So we start from a position where there is no effective protection in place for businesses to prevent them being badly treated by banks and their associates. If we add to that no real disincentive for banks and their associates to behave badly and even criminally towards those businesses, if there is then nothing to stop the same banks and associates from simply pulling the plug on those businesses and hoovering up their assets to distribute among themselves, if those same businesses have nowhere that is within their financial means, at any rate, to take their complaints of poor treatment where they can have a realistic chance of resolving problems they do experience before their businesses and lives are consumed by them, or at least receive a satisfactory amount of compensation where substantial loss or damage has been suffered. Then on top of that, if we repeatedly fail to take allegations of mistreatment and fraud seriously, and we refuse again and again to investigate and clamp down on bad and even criminal behaviour when it occurs, and even on those rare occasions when we do eventually investigate and prosecute, as in the case of HBOS Reading, it is the foot soldiers we go after, not the generals. So we have, adding all this together, it's really not hard to see this. It's an awful recipe where thousands of businesses have been devastated, their owners' lives shattered, and many jobs lost. If we repeatedly fail, Mr. Bowen, to take allegations of mistreatment and fraud seriously and refuse again and again to investigate and clamp down on bad and criminal behaviour, then there is no reason why such actions will ever stop occurring. And my plea to the Minister, reinforcing and seconding the questions asked by the honourable gentleman who spoke before me, for the sake of UK PLC and the many devastated businesses affected by the issues I have tried to describe, I want to see some clear action to ensure justice is served.